human war crime. Yet, one night of airstrikes is no substitute for a coherent strategy. But they seem to be forgetting the last time the U.S. didn't take action. Here's President Obama in 2012.
We have communicated in no uncertain terms with every player in the region that that's a red line for us, and that there would be enormous consequences if we start seeing movement on the chemical weapons front or the use of chemical weapons. That would change my calculations significantly.
How'd that work out, Nancy? Joining me now, former senior advisor to the Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton, Philippe Reines. So, Philippe, from a Democratic perspective, what is the critique of President Trump's Syrian military response?
Well, I think when there's something like this, where there's American lives in danger, you want to try to keep it out of politics. So let me start there. The problem here, Syria is a wicked problem, and I grant President Trump that he inherited much like North Korea. The problem is, and it includes in what he has said and what his White House says and what you just showed, is this constant comparison to Barack Obama or this constant running against Hillary Clinton. It is not 2016. Donald Trump has been president for 15 months. It is time to compare himself to him.
Okay, no, but listen, this is exactly what President Obama did. I mean, he bashed Bush for almost the whole entire 8 years he was in the White House. You can't say Donald Trump just made up all of a sudden criticizing your predecessor.
But
I mean,
you're asking about Syria, and I think the president he should be comparing himself to is himself. We were sitting here a year ago, almost exactly, talking about the last strike on Syria, which, by the way, I think was warranted. And again, this strike, given what he's doing, is warranted. The problem is that if you're going to hold a president to their words, which I think you should absolutely do, it is not a coincidence that less than 2 weeks ago, he himself said, we're leaving. Now, this is a man who has said repeatedly, don't announce, don't telegraph.
Let me get in, though. Okay. He doesn't want a nation build, and he doesn't want to fall into the trap that George W. Bush did in Iraq and Afghanistan, and that Hillary and Obama criticized Bush for, of staying forever and just wasting trillions of dollars, blood and treasure. And he was very successful in the campaign running on, not going on to these big adventures abroad and rebuilding America, not rebuilding the Middle East. That doesn't mean he wants to get out. That just doesn't mean, it just means that he doesn't want to stay there for eternity.
Well, hold on. In fairness, he literally said, I want to leave.
Yeah, he does want to leave. I mean,
but then 2 weeks later,
we all want to leave Syria.
Okay, but then don't go back in. I think the problem is,
no, because it was a balanced strike. It was not a decapitation strike. He wasn't tipping the scales in the Civil War where all of a sudden the rebels were going to take over and it was going to be a hornet's nest. It was surgical and it was precise, and we still now have the status quo on the ground with the rebels, but they don't have the capability of launching chemical attacks as much.
Militarily, this was incredibly effective. The military does what the mission they're given. There is no question to that. But your previous guest was wrong. This was not a perfect strike. A perfect strike means that 1 year from now, you and I won't be talking about this strike and why it didn't end things.
How dare you insult Dr. Sebastian Gorka? He's never been wrong, Dr. Gorka. Unbelievable. I cannot believe you, Felipe. I mean, Dr. Gorka, infallible. Infallible.
Until the time he was fired.
No, listen. Yeah, I know what happened with you too, Felipe. I've seen your name in the news recently. Here's the deal. The President Obama, and I hate to go back to it, but this is a political segment. President Obama drew a red line and didn't enforce it, and then let Putin come in, try to save the day, and cut this deal so Obama could save face. And everybody was bragging about how they got all the chemical weapons out of Syria. I think we have some tape on that. Let's listen.
We were able to find a solution that actually removed the chemical weapons that were known from Syria in a way that the use of force would never have accomplished.
Russia has been constructive in helping to remove 100% of the declared chemical weapons from Syria. In fact, that was an agreement we made months ago, and it never faltered, even during these moments of conflict.
People may criticize us for not having launched missiles against Assad after chemical weapons had been used, but keep in mind why we didn't. We didn't because they got rid of the chemical weapons. And that, in fact, was very important.
Now, looking back on that, Felipe, what do you think about that?
I think the same thing I said a few minutes ago, that presidents should follow through on what they say. And if not, they're going to deal with the consequences. President Trump said something a couple of weeks ago that he's now dealing with the consequences. And again, this is a tough problem, but it's another campaign promise, like you said, that he's not following through on.
Listen, you're right. No, there are a lot of people on the right now.
There are a lot of people
that are very
on this network.
Yes,
yeah.
Very angry, exactly, that he's launching missiles into Syria after saying he wasn't going to get involved in the Middle East like other presidents have done. But like when he said this, and this really stuck out to me, when you see people thrashing in pain and gasping for air, those were war crimes, and you can't sit by and look at that video as a leader of the free world and not send a message by launching an attack to prevent this from never happening again. As a civilized world, it cannot happen. I think both parties agree on that.
Assad is a monster.
Right.
And I am glad what happened last night happened. I'm glad it happened a year ago.
I think we all are. We all,
but I don't want to be
parties
back
are.
here a year from now.
Neither do we. Neither do we.
But the
All
other
right?
problem
I
is
got to run those, Felipe. I got to run. All right. Up next, the Syrian refugee shares what life is like under the Assad regime. The pictures coming out of Syria following last week's attack.